This is your housing market review for March of 2026 for the Central Okanagan. The Central Okanagan has lagged behind some of the other areas in the interior, which is kind of strange. It's uncharacteristic because generally, the higher the population base, the stronger the economy, and the stronger the real estate market. And usually, the Central Okanagan has led the way over the North Okanagan and Shuswap, Revelstoke, and Kamloops, but it hasn't been the case in this downward turn. The Central Okanagan is now starting to bounce back. And it's still sort of showing metrics that are slightly less than the North or Kamloops, but it is starting to come back. And you won't be able to keep that economy down. It's the third largest city in British Columbia, and it is most likely going to continue to bounce back to its rightful position. If you look at these metrics, this is the first quarter of the averages of the first quarter of 2026 compared to, and these figures, 13.1% means that the average of the first quarter in 2025, which was, if we look at absorption, was 10.64% to 12.04%, the average in the first quarter of 2026. That's up 13.1%. So that's in the right direction. It's still just barely inching into that balanced market range finally. If you look at the sales, we're actually down 4%. Inventory is down 12%. So that's an indicator of the demand is starting to increase over the incoming supply. If the absorption or the inventory is going down, the demand is over incoming supply, and vice versa, of course. Prices are actually down about 6%. A lot of realtors will say, in their opinion, it's more than that. These are just detached housing statistics. And the reason we do that is because we find that all the other markets tend to follow detached housing statistics. If we look over at the data center, the absorption in March was 14.05 in the Central Okanagan, up from 9.68 in January, 11 in February. So again, like all of the metrics in British Columbia and the areas that we cover, they are on a rising trajectory. Maybe let's look at when last year, January, February, March, it was all 10 point something percent. So very, very flat. No increase in the market due to the spring market, the incoming spring market, whereas this year, fairly dramatic. There's like 5 percentage points there from 9.68, 11, and 14. Sales, 91 in January, 115 in February, 160 in March. Last year, flat, right? Except for it started to jump up in March, but 110, 122, 149. So that definitely a trajectory, and there's more sales in the first quarter of 2026 total than there was in the of 2025 than there was in the first quarter of 2026. So the Central Okanagan seems to be coming back into recovery mode. I think you'll see this figure start stepping up in April, May, June, up into that 15, 16, 17, 18% as it approaches the seller's market. Lots of my realtors are reporting multiple offers are starting to come back with more than one buyer, of course, bidding on the same house. So that's an indicator as well of a recovering market. But you have to put it all into context because it's just ever so slightly starting to turn. If we see April and May and June stats increasing over what they increased last year, so that's a very significant statement. It's got to. Every market increases in the spring. Doesn't matter how awful it is or how great it is. The best market is that March, April, May, June, July, August. That half of the year. So you have to see if it's increasing more than it does historically, and that's what I think is going to happen. But just very slightly, we will see a slightly better market at the end of this year when we compare it to 2025. So that's Central Okanagan for March of 2026.